She goes on to say that I feel this is something which my managers need some education on, and tenants abuse the reasonable accommodation policies often. So Ann, thank you for your question, and now we're going to talk to Ms. Vicki about what are the differences.
Well, Ann, that is a great question, and there are several differences, but let us first start with the definitions. You know, HUD oversees the reasonable accommodations and the animals, and the ADA oversees the public and the animals. And with that being said, let's look at some definitions and the theories of the groups. ADA defines a service animal as a dog that has been individually trained to work or perform tasks for an individual with a disability. The tasks performed by the dog must directly relate to that person's disability. And that's a great thing. I don't know whether you guys notice or not, but ADA only considers dogs as the animals. They don't consider birds, cats, or anything like that. So only a service animal under the ADA regulations is a dog. The other thing is, let's look at HUD definition. Most support animals or therapy, that a dog that learns to hear for a person or something of that nature. Under the support animals and therapy animals, and these animals do a service, not like the ADA service, but on the HUD side we have the treatment. They keep a person from being lonely. The big statement that managers need to keep in mind is that these are not pets. They are not pets. A lot of animals are considered by management, quote unquote, to be pets, and they want to apply a pet rule, a pet deposit, but you can't for these animals. Very important that you follow the fair housing rule that need these accommodations. Now, one of the things that we're Fair Housing out of Washington was saying that one of the biggest issues, Ebony, that they're facing online, that I have an emotional support animal or I have are useless. ADA doesn't look at them at all.
Wow.
But as far as HUD is concerned, they are useless. You're wasting your money and you're wasting your time if you try to go online to get a certification handbook. In the 4350.3 handbook, you'll find it says that you need to get a third-party verification from a doctor, a physician the person has, and that's how you need to verify the condition. And it could be from VA even. But you need that third-party verification from a person who's treating the disability. Another thing that we have to keep in mind is that there has to be a nexus between the disability and the animal or the request. There has to be something in common. So as you send your third-party verifications out, managers, make sure they ask the questions that you need asked. There are several fair housing lawyers who have on their web page the request for reasonable accommodations from physicians for assistance animals, and most of them are even free.
Okay, and let's talk about the questions that you can and cannot ask. Let's say that you are questioning a certification that they've given you. What's fair to ask about and what's not?
Well, you can send the verification to ask if there is a disability. The verification will ask if there's a nexus, if there is a condition or a common thread between the disability and the request that's being asked. You cannot ask what the specific disability is. If the doctor returns the information to you, and I've seen this in files where the physician fills out the third-party verification, sends it back to the owner agent, and it specifically says what's wrong with the resident and how the physician is treating it. If you have that out, black it out. If you receive it, black it out. You cannot ask what the condition is. HUD says that if a condition is obvious, such as a person in a wheelchair that might have a limb missing, that you don't even need to do a third-party verification because the disability is obvious to the site. But there are so many disabilities that are not obvious, and you do have to do the third-party verification. One thing I do want to mention is some of the disabilities can be mental or emotional, and those won't be seen by the manager. And it's such a second nature for people to say, well, what's wrong with you? You don't look like there's anything wrong with you. Don't do it. It's a fair housing violation. Don't do it.
You think of it as being common courtesy or something,
Yes.
but really it's a violation of
It
their
is.
Housing Act.
It's a violation of their civil rights.
Okay, so now we know the difference between the emotional support animals and all the others, but you say do not call them a pet, and you cannot charge a fee for that animal to live there.
True. The animals that are in your property under the reasonable accommodation can have rules and regulations, but they can't have pet rules and regulations. You can ask the resident or the applicant to clean up behind the animal. You can't restrict an animal to a reasonable accommodation animal, an emotional support or therapy animal to a particular part of your property. We had, this is a big thing that several managers, and we really want to thank Ann again for coming forth with it. We had a email about 3 weeks ago where the tenant or the resident was taking the animal, her emotional support animal, into the dining room.
Okay.
And we talked a little about that when we had the people from Fair Housing here. That animal has the right, under the reasonable accommodation policy, to sit in her lap. If the rest of the residents in the dining room don't want to eat at the table with an animal, that is their right. They don't have to, but management can't bar that animal from coming in, being with that person. Again, they can't restrict the size. We have seen animals that are small ponies, ferrets, monkeys, and an array of things. Where the problem is coming in, the public will go online and receive one of these certifications that they pay $50, $75, $100 for, and say that it's an emotional support animal. And they want to use this documentation to get on the airplane with the animal. I think that we will see in the near future where the airlines are beginning to do a different mode of checking and verifying the need for the animal.
Okay. There's pictures on the internet of a turkey on a plane, and it was an emotional support animal, according to the passenger.
And the thing with that is, what type of medical documentation did the passenger have? And in all of the little researches and the little workshops and things that I've been going to, my son is on oxygen. But we can't just take that portable oxygen machine onto the airplane. They require us to have the doctor fill out a form that they supply and return to them before we can even board the plane with the oxygen. And I think that that's the way the airlines are leaning toward the emotional support animals because, as Ann said, there are people who are abusing it. There are people who have disabilities. It might be seizure related, it might be mental stability, and they actually calm themselves down once they have that animal to pet or to stroke or what have you. But then you have the people who see them with their animals and they decide, well, I'm going to take my dog or my turkey too. You know, I'm going to push the button to see how far up the ladder I can go. That's why ADA only says dogs. They used to have dogs and cats, but when they had their last update, it came out to dogs only.
Man's best friend.
They say.
All right, so we want to make sure that you know that you can send us your questions because we really want to answer them, because we know those are the topics that you're dealing with right now. And you can do that by going to our website, navigatehousing.com, and just look for the Submit a Tuesday Tip page. We also put it in the email that we sent you this morning down at the bottom, so you can click that link. You can either write us an email like Ann did, or there's an option to upload a video of yourself asking the question.
Yes.
So,
And I just want to remind the landlords to be fair and to be understanding. As with anything, there are always people out there who want to abuse the system. But there are people who are disabled that need the assistance, the therapy, the emotional support animal, and we want to be fair to them. And with that being said, thank you again, Ann, for your question. Thank you, Margie, for sending in yours, saying that it's just getting out of hand. And we'll see you next Tuesday on Navigate's Tuesday Tips.
see ya.
Bye.
Have a great day.